Disney, back in the headlines. HR employee exposes them, human resources, for racist hiring practices. Put up the picture for a mask. This is a different kind of whistleblower, if I can contextualize it that way. Because the human resources personnel, they are engaged in the hiring process. They see it top to bottom, beginning, middle, and end. Rochella Brown, a Black woman who worked in human resources for the Walt Disney Company in Los Angeles, is now suing the entertainment giant for wrongful termination, claiming she was fired after pointing out discriminatory practices against Black and Muslim employees at the company. Brown was hired by Disney in August 2022 as a human resources specialist, which means she has specialized training, and says in her lawsuit filed in Los Angeles Superior Court, obtained by Atlanta Black Star, that she enjoyed her position, performed it well, and hoped to make a career at the company. The irony is, she's talking about employees that are already at Disney. She's bringing it to the attention of management. That is what your human resources specialist is supposed to do. That may help you avoid a lawsuit. Liability has been eliminated. It continues. But now, she says, she soon came to recognize, quote, troubling patterns of discrimination. The company disproportionately laid off Black workers and employees over the age of 40 during its reductions in force. This took place in 2022 and years afterwards. 7,000 workers gone. Heavily recruiting employees on H-1B visas from Asian countries, particularly from India and China. So we already know that game. We remember when Trump and a few others got involved in some of that commentary. And MAGA had to shut up about how billionaires and companies like this play that game. Okay, there's more. All right, so one manager's proposed reduction in force list included only African Americans. Y'all can't make this up, man. Let me just pause on this for a second. She says one of the proposals only fired Black people. That's insanity. And there's more. All right, put it back up. So she says one of the proposals from a manager, because they obviously had to come up with proposals to fire people, included only African Americans, Ms. Brown claims. And she says she disclosed her concerns about the lopsided layoffs to supervisors, including Disney's HR director, Ivania Slater. Quote, they didn't take sufficient action or meaningfully engage with Ms. Brown about these issues when she raised them. This is what one of her co-counsel has said on the record and told Atlanta Black Star. Then, in the aftermath of the October 7th, 2023 attack by Hamas, terrorists in Israel, the complaint says Disney issued a public and issued public and internal statements concerning the attack, which some employees communicated to HR they thought, quote, contributed to a hostile work environment, end quote. Some employees referenced Slack communications in employee chat groups in which other Disney employees had, quote, uttered troubling generalizations, accusing all Arabs or all Muslims of supporting terrorism or violence, the lawsuit says. Now, I fully expect all of these allegations to be noted for the record because the attorney has the power of subpoena. And these are records. I'm sure they already have a non-spoilage record letter to not get rid of stuff. But think about the context of this. And this is typical of bigots who won't think analytically. White males don't want to be blamed for Timothy McVeigh. White males don't want to be blamed for the school shooter who happens to be a white male. Because all white males obviously don't think that way. But the generalization appears when the context happens to be, let's just say somebody non-white. And all of a sudden, the generalizations are so extreme, and let's think on the level of comfort. They are sharing it on official communications at Disney, creating more than significant liability for the company. It goes on. Brown, likewise, alarmed when she viewed some of the alleged harassing comments. How does she view them? She's the HR specialist. She has access. So she viewed some of these comments made by Disney employees and says she discussed her concerns with the HR director, again, suggesting the company take remedial measures to ensure Jewish employees continue to feel supported, but also prevent discrimination or harassment of Arab or Muslim employees. Once again, that director failed to take action according to the lawsuit. Now, it could not have been that difficult because I saw students at Emory University did not come from the same point of view as the conflict, but they were walking, marching, hand in hand, because they understood the bigger play and the larger narrative. Once again, she's still a team player. She's still trying to save the company and do something meaningful for the employees to all feel valued. There's more. Brown says she personally experienced racial discrimination at Disney by being treated differently than white employees and being passed over for opportunities for professional advancement. Brown typically worked in person 3 days a week and another 2 days remotely. She says she and another African-American employee were publicly reprimanded during a team meeting by Slater, who admonished them that they should work at least 4 days in person. Meanwhile, other non-African-American employees worked remotely 4 days per week, but were not reprimanded in a similar way. The complaint contends. In another alleged instance of desperate treatment, Brown says Disney denied her request for reimbursement for a Society of Human Resource Management certification, a credential commonly obtained by HR professionals in California. It cost $500. The company cited, quote, lack of business need in denying her request. But the company did agree to reimburse the tuition expenses of white employees, Summer Throm, to attend a master's degree program at the University of Southern California, which cost more than $60,000, the complaint says. And I guarantee you all of those classes were not about human resources. There's more. So it notes that Thome did not engage in the legally protected activities of recording alleged discrimination. While Brown, did. Okay. So Brown claims that even though she came to the job with a master's degree from USC in Human Resources Management, Disney deprived her of opportunities and assignments that would help her to advance. She says her supervisors disproportionately assigned such opportunities to Thome, who began working at the company in May 2022 and whose prior recent work experience consisted of a job as an administrative assistant and as a dance and yoga instructor. So what are they attempting to do with Thome here, allegedly? Well, they're creating the credential matrix so that Thome can be comparable, competitive to Ms. Brown. At least that's the argument, and I believe that is the intent. So Thome was promoted to the role of Associate HR Business Partner in May 2024. Quote, a promotion Ms. Brown was more qualified for. The complaint argues in December 2023, Brown's supervisor told her that she was under investigation for allegedly logging unworked overtime. The allegations lacked any factual basis, the lawsuit says, noting that Brown's supervisors consistently reviewed and approved all overtime hours Brown logged. In other words, if there's something nefarious, that means they engage in a co-conspiracy because when she logs them, they review them and approve them. She cannot do it on her own. There's more. January 4th, 2024, Disney fired Ms. Brown. Quote, citing this pretextual reason, the complaint says Brown asserts that her supervisors were aware of another employee, Carmen Sanchez, quote, who previously logged unworked overtime nearly every single day, end quote. The company investigated Sanchez and confirmed she wrongly claimed the overtime, but chose not to fire her and instead used or issued a reprimand, Brown alleges. The complaint further notes that Sanchez is not African American and, quote, never engaged in the type of protected activity Ms. Brown engaged in. In other words, Ms. Brown is a troublemaker, Ms. Sanchez was not. Okay? That's the point that Disney is trying to make. All right, Walt Disney did not immediately return message from Atlanta Black Star. Great reporting by Atlanta Black Star. Yeah, so Watson, here's the thing, brother. She has a master's in human resources, obviously very proficient, administratively sound, likely has way more information than they could ever imagine because they underrated her from day one. She has the goods on them. This subpoena will get the rest of the records. Disney should settle, and I would be petty if I was the attorney and make them also pay for that damn $500 training that she took that they decided not to.
Dr. Richey, let's try to be charitable here on the part of Disney, right? Let's assume everything is above board. They want us to believe that there's Ms. Brown who comes in super credentialed, very experienced at the job, who's been hyper vigilant about, sort of racial discrepancies and firings. Again, October 7th, 2023, you can understand why Jewish employees might have heightened emotions at that time. Like, it's completely understandable, but like, we still want to cultivate a nice work environment for all of our employees, not just the Jewish ones. The person who's being hyper diligent about human resources, or, it's just that this other person is just more talented and just, she's just a human resource wonderkind. Dr. Richey, that's what we're supposed to believe. It's not that this other person was, basically heightening the contradictions within the company all the time, basically doing her job as an HR professional? Or is that no, this other person's just way more talented at HR, Dr. Richey. Just a special HR employee that we had to elevate. We had to get them to skip the line. I mean, I'll let the audience decide which seems a lot more plausible in that effect. And what I would say, man, to all of our listeners who are in corporate environments, I would say this, and it sucks, but the rule of thumb in most corporate environments, they're not your friends, man. They basically work at the behest of the bosses. And the reason why, it's not because they're evil. The reason why, you could just take this Miss Brown case. You don't play ball with the bosses as an extension of the arm of the bosses. They will get you out of there. They're only going to keep the people in who act on behalf of the bosses and not the employees, basically us underlings at the bottom. And so always be wary of HR professionals, because when they do the right thing, they get targeted.
Yep. And the irony is her lawsuit is filed, but she has created the atmosphere for a whole lot of other lawsuits to be filed, because the other folk probably did not know about that level of discrimination. They know now. All right, we'll bring updates as they come.